Hey everyone, it's Mabin with Mabin Led Keep Photography, and as always, we are here to serve and help you create the most amazing wedding day ever. Weddings, as we've established, are pretty overwhelming. And one of the elements of planning a wedding that can easily become the most painful part is your wedding guest list. Keeping your wedding to a reasonable number can be really, really hard. There are all sorts of expectations of yourselves, of other family members, of friends that are kind of put on you when you get engaged and you start planning your wedding. And it can be really, really easy to just completely freak out and feel like you have to invite every single person that you know and then every single person that your family members know. And it goes from being a reasonable number to your budget being blown by 10, 20, 30 times. So there are a few things you can do to kind of bypass this, but there are also some ways to really hunker down and stick to your guns. It's not an easy process. This is probably the most painful part of the wedding planning process, especially if you want an intimate wedding. And I feel like we can speak to this a little bit because Daniel and I only had 32 people at our wedding, and it was a very stressful part of our wedding, but in the end, we're glad that we had an intimate wedding. Now, there are a couple of options that will immediately help you cut down your guest list. Number one, you can have a destination wedding. Having a wedding that requires any more travel than, an hour or two will immediately cut down the guest list. People just can't afford hotels all the time, or they can't afford flights if you choose a really far destination, that kind of thing. So that will help a little bit. The other thing people do sometimes when they get overwhelmed is they elope. A lot of times elopements are just the two of you and maybe a couple other family members, and that's it. And with elopements, you usually don't tell anybody ahead of time, and it's more of a surprise at the end. Now, these all come with their positives and their negatives, and we will talk separately in different videos about destination weddings and elopements, just so you can kind of get an idea of what they're all about. But today, we're focusing on the guest list. So I kind of want to take you through the process that Daniel and I had when we came to saying, okay, we really want an intimate wedding. We don't have the money to do a big wedding. If we ended up spending the money that we had on guest meals and favors and things like that, other parts of our wedding would have suffered, or we would have gone into a lot of debt. We were lucky we didn't have to go into a lot of debt for our wedding, and keeping the guest list small was a huge part of that. So my number one tip that you should do regardless, if you want to keep your guest list small, is to do a pre-announcement. That means before you send out invites, before you do save the dates, probably pretty quickly after you get engaged, or even in your engagement announcement, make sure you let people know that you're having an intimate wedding that is going to be mostly immediate family members and a few close friends, or however you want to do it. The sooner you put that information out into the universe, the less likely you're going to have people with super high expectations. So we've talked about priorities a lot. It's going to be a recurring theme. So after you set your priorities as far as what is the most important parts of your wedding, that is when Daniel and I decided to start creating our guest lists. And we did essentially 2 guest lists. We may have done 3, but I think it was mostly 2. So we did a guest list that included everybody that we wanted to invite. And then we did a guest list that we included everybody that we had to have there. And let me tell you, there were many times during our wedding planning process that we wanted to elope. But the reason we didn't elope was because of those must-haves. We would have really severely broken some hearts, and it may have even irreparably damaged some relationships. Most people are going to be 100% okay with not being invited. They might be a little hurt, but they'll eventually get over it. They're going to be more excited for you than anything. Hurt feelings are something we need to be aware of, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But by having these 2 guest lists, we were able to take a look at our budget, and we were able to look at our priorities and say, okay, this is the amount of people that we can feed, that we can have favors for, that we can have all of the other fun things that come along with a wedding that we wanted to have. And that number was 30. So it really made it difficult. Most of the secondary list was sadly not involved in our wedding, and we primarily focused on our immediate family with a couple of close friends. Now, with those people who didn't make the wedding invite list, again, kind of go through and who you think is going to be more emotional about it, who is more likely to be hurt. I would highly recommend contacting those people in person. Give them a call over the phone, invite them for coffee, explain your circumstance. They may still be disappointed, but if you're reaching out to them personally, then a lot of times they're going to be okay with it. And my last little tip about keeping your guest list small is stay strong. You are going to have people who complain that they're not invited to your wedding. You're going to have people who try to invite themselves to your wedding. You're going to have people who just don't get it. They don't understand why you're having a small wedding. And my advice to you is stick to your guns, stay strong. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be 100% worth it. The moment you relent for one guest, it kind of opens the floodgates for everybody else. And that wasn't our personal experience because we did stick to our guns, but I have talked to other wedding couples where that has ended up happening, that they tried to have a really small wedding and they relented and it just kind of went crazy. So as difficult as it is, you can do it. You can stay strong. I have faith in you. So, and again, all of this is relative based on what your priorities are and what your budget is. Some people, it is important to have a big wedding and have all of their wedding guests there. And maybe it's not as important as the venue or the food or something else that is costly. So you can kind of, maybe make concessions in other places to allow for a larger guest list. But just be aware of that when you're planning. All right, guys. Well, I hope this video has been helpful. That's it for this time around. Again, if you ever have any questions or concerns, do not hesitate to contact me. I would love to help you in any way that I can. And I will see you in the next video. All right, guys. Have a good one. I love you. Bye. Another Flo cameo. I flow mama. Kitty cameo. Do not drink LaCroix before you record. That's what I get for drinking LaCroix.